Did the judge ever say, you have to do this, or if you do this,
you come see me 3 times and we'll take care of this. Come visit me a few times, we'll take care of it.
He would say that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And how many women do you think were also doing this?
Total over the years, hundreds.
It's the kind of story that feels too twisted for reality, yet it keeps unfolding in ways that sound straight out of a Southern Gothic thriller. A sheriff turned accused slayer, a judge with whispers of dark secrets swirling around his name, and now a psychological evaluation that could hold the key to everything.
We got to know what led to this, Mickey. What transpired leading up to this? Because I know it just didn't happen for no reason. Something's happened.
Be fair to me.
We'll be fair to you.
Just don't beat on me.
I ain't gonna beat on you. Nobody else is gonna beat on you.
There is a lot more to the story. Allegations of a secret sex ring.
Former Letcher County Sheriff Shawn "Mickey" Stines isn't just sitting in jail waiting for his trial on charges that he executed Judge Kevin Mullins in cold blood inside chambers. He's asking the court to unseal the results of a psychological evaluation that had been quietly tucked away under seal. And the timing isn't random. With a critical hearing looming, the defense seems determined to plant the seeds of an insanity claim, or at least some version of mental instability that paints Stines not as a cold-blooded slayer, but as a man broken by paranoia, betrayal, and emotional disturbance.
Baby, I can't get over this sheriff shooting this judge, dude. I wouldn't ask permission. I wouldn't talk shit. I wouldn't ask you to arrest nobody. Just go handle business. You touch one of my girls, I'm fixing to change your trajectory on the planet, and that's what this sheriff did.
When Stines stepped into that courthouse in September 2024 and allegedly fired at a man who had been his longtime friend, people were stunned. These weren't enemies. They weren't rivals on paper. Just hours earlier, they had been seen sharing lunch together. Then, in a chilling turn, surveillance footage reportedly showed Stines walking into Mullins' chambers, making phone calls to his daughter, and then opening fire. He walked out, surrendered almost immediately, and reportedly told officers something that sent shivers through everyone who heard it, that his wife and daughter were in danger, that someone was trying to kidnap them. Right then, it stopped sounding like a straightforward case of rage and started smelling like something else: delusion, paranoia, maybe even full-blown psychosis. And now, nearly a year later, his legal team wants that psychological evaluation unsealed. They argue it's not just a formality, but essential to giving the court a fair understanding of Stines' mental state. If the judge agrees, these documents could reveal whether Stines had been spiraling into mental illness long before the shooting, or whether this is a carefully timed defense strategy meant to soften what otherwise looks like a brutal ending of a public official. The insanity defense is one of the trickiest, most controversial moves in a courtroom. Jurors often view it with suspicion, seeing it as an escape hatch for criminals. But when it sticks, it can change everything. And in Stines' case, the ground is already fertile for doubt. Those around him recall strange behavior after the slaying, claims that shadowy forces were out to get him and his family, bizarre rambling statements that didn't line up with reality. His attorney has already floated the phrase extreme emotional disturbance, which is often a softer way of introducing the possibility that the accused wasn't in his right mind. The unsealing of this evaluation would allow his defense to take that from suggestion to hard evidence. But here's where the story gets darker, and where speculation refuses to die. Judge Mullins wasn't just a small-town Kentucky judge who kept to the book. After his demise, shocking allegations began spilling into the open. A woman came forward claiming Mullins had been running a courthouse like a brothel, coercing young women into physical intimacy in exchange for leniency, cash, or favors. She described wild parties where it wasn't just Mullins, but others in the community, men in positions of authority who participated in a sordid ring that blurred the line between consensual and coercion.
The judge would have sex with inmates from the jail.
Yes.
And you saw it.
Yes. I was part of it. I was one of them.
How did they keep it a secret?
It wasn't a secret.
Why did you feel like you had to have sex with the judge?
Because he's the one with the power. He holds my entire life in his hands. Not just from being in jail, like coming in off the street and seeing him. He's the one that makes the decisions over whether I get to keep my children or not. He's the one that makes the decisions on whether I go to jail.
She admitted that, yes, she went along with it, but out of fear. fear that child services would come after her kids if she didn't comply, fear of being ruined if she resisted. Another former jail official backed up hearing the whispers of these parties, saying the stories were widespread. And then there was the bombshell from years earlier, when a different woman alleged she'd actually witnessed Mullins being physically intimate with a girl in chambers, and that there were tapes, videotapes, of physical encounters tied to the judge. In small communities, gossip is constant, but when multiple women start echoing the same themes, the question lingers. Was Mullins' slaying simply the snapping of a friendship, or did Stines know something darker, something that left him unable to hold it together?
What did you think when the sheriff shot the judge?
A lot of the corruption was going to come out. Either knew something or something was going on that he knew about that we all might not know about, that he was doing something to protect us. There'd be girls sign themselves out and take them on home. It was sick.
The supervisors would take the inmates home for the night?
Yes.
The judge would have sex with inmates from the jail?
Yes.
And you saw it?
Yes. I was part of it. I was one of them.
Some close to the case wonder if Stines wasn't just paranoid, but haunted. If his paranoia about his family being kidnapped wasn't pulled from thin air, but from being tangled in the dangerous knowledge of what the judge was allegedly involved in. If he knew about these intimacy for favor schemes, and if his loyalty to Mullins had turned into disgust, fear, or a mental break. That opens the door to a psychological narrative far more complicated than a straightforward insanity plea. Think about it. Here's a sheriff, sworn to uphold the law, reportedly a longtime friend of the very judge who may have been abusing his position in grotesque ways. Stines wasn't just any outsider, he was an insider with proximity, someone who would have been impossible to fool forever. And if he did see things, if he did hear rumors confirmed behind closed doors, then the psychological weight of knowing and staying silent could gnaw at someone's sanity. When you layer that with the possibility of an already unstable mind, the cracks start showing.
That it was a brothel. It is all just it's all a brothel. One of the female guards specifically was telling me that one of the places she takes male inmate, and that's where they take them. They get took up into the courthouse, especially after hours late at night, nobody's at work.
But that raises another question. Was this truly madness or a calculated way out? If Stines' defense can convince a jury that his actions were the result of delusions and paranoia, the outcome could be drastically different than if he's seen as a man who calmly ate lunch with a friend and then walked into his office to gun him down without hesitation. An insanity finding doesn't mean freedom. It rarely ever does. It often means years, even decades, confined in a psychiatric facility under strict supervision. But it also avoids the harshest penalties that come with a straight conviction for the slaying of a sitting judge. Penalties that could lock him away for life or, even worse, strip him of any chance of eventual release. The legal system doesn't hand out insanity verdicts easily. Experts are cautious, juries are skeptical, and prosecutors are already gearing up to argue that Stines knew exactly what he was doing. He resigned just hours before his arraignment last October, a move that some say shows calculation and forethought rather than mental collapse. He surrendered peacefully, without a chaotic standoff or signs of uncontrolled behavior, and his actions before the shooting, like calmly meeting for lunch with Mullins, can be painted as deliberate, not frenzied or impulsive. To the prosecution, the idea of mental illness is just a smokescreen, a carefully staged tactic designed to make a lawman-turned-slayer look less culpable and dodge accountability. Yet there's that evaluation sitting in the court record, sealed, and Stines' attorneys believe it helps their case enough to fight to bring it into the light. That alone suggests there's something in those pages, something they believe will tilt sympathy his way. If it revealed him as perfectly sound, there'd be no reason to ask. Which means, at minimum, there are findings that point to disturbance, perhaps diagnosable conditions that could reshape the entire narrative.
How common was that?
More common than you would want to believe in the court system. When there's policy, once an inmate leaves that jail space, you're not supposed to be in contact with them for 6 months. There'd be girls sign themselves out and take them on home. It was sick.
The supervisors would take the inmates home for the night?
Yes.
The timing is also intriguing. This motion comes just as a hearing approaches to argue whether Stines' indictment should even stand. His defense has already filed to dismiss the charges, and if they can fold mental instability into that fight, the story changes yet again. Is it desperation or is it strategy? Meanwhile, whispers in Letcher County don't fade. The stories about Mullins' private life, the alleged brothel-like courthouse, the so-called swinger culture in the community, all of it gives this case a surreal backdrop. And that context matters, because if jurors are exposed to those allegations, the line between victim and villain blurs in unsettling ways. Was Stines a culprit acting on delusion, spiraling into paranoia with no grasp on reality? Or was he a man driven to the edge by knowledge of corruption at the highest level of his small-town justice system, a man who finally snapped under the weight of secrets? Was Mullins a respected judge cut down in cold blood, or a figure whose private life became the fuse that ignited his own destruction in the most violent way possible? That's why the psychological angle is so important here. Stines' mental state doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's tied to what he believed, what he feared, and what he may have known about Mullins. If he truly thought his wife and child were in danger, jurors will have to weigh whether that was the irrational paranoia of an unstable mind or the panicked reaction of someone who knew too much. The difference between delusion and perception could shape the outcome of this entire case, because one points to sickness while the other hints at buried truths. Either way, those sealed pages could be the most explosive evidence yet, holding details capable of tilting the balance of guilt, sympathy, or doubt. The motion to unseal isn't just a dry legal filing, it's a crack in the door of Stines' mind, a hint at whether this case will turn on proof of insanity or collapse into the darker mess of scandal, corruption, and betrayal. And until the court rules, speculation will only grow, because right now, in this tangled story of a sheriff, a judge, and a slaying that shocked a county, the biggest question isn't just who pulled the trigger, we know that. The question is why he did it, and whether his mind was his own when he did. That's all for this video. See you next time.